Okay, we didn't have too many discussions, but a French book discussed in English, I think it's a premiere.
Yes, it's exactly what Julio mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so I think we're live and we can actually start the meeting. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking part in the third book discussion organized by the Journal of Romanian Studies. Our guests tonight are Dorina Roșca, author of the book Le Grand Tournant de la Société Moldave, Intelectualii, capital social dans la transformation post-socialiste. And the English title is The Great Turning Point in Moldovan Society, Intellectuals and Social Capital in the Post-Socialist Transformation, published in 2019 by Press Dolinalco, and Petru Negură, who reviewed the book for the upcoming issue of the Journal of Romanian Studies. I'll introduce the speakers for tonight, and then we'll have a discussion about the book. So Dorina Roșca holds a PhD with highest honors in socioeconomy of the development from the École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales from Paris, France. She was a research fellow at the Center for the Study of Modes of Industrialization and is currently associate researcher of the Laboratory of Social Dynamics and Spatial Reconstruction, the mixed research unit of the National Center of Scientific Research in France. She's also a lecturer at the American University of Moldova in Chișinău. Dorina's current research is focused on the Central and Southeast European countries, taking a broad interest in their economic, social, and political development. She's particularly interested in the various forms of capitalism developed under the influence of migration, reciprocity as forms of economic integration, and the oligarchic political economy. Petru Negură, the reviewer of Dorina's book, is currently a Humboldt Fellow at the Leibniz Institute for East and Southeast European Studies in Regensburg, Germany, where he researches nation building and mass schooling in Bessarabia, Transnistria, and Ukraine. Petru holds a PhD in sociology from the same school as Dorina does, l'École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales, and he's an associate professor at the Free International University of Moldova, and a researcher at the Institute of Legal, Political, and Sociological Research, both based in Chișinău. He has been leading the Plural Forum for Interdisciplinary Studies in Chișinău, and is the co-founder and co-editor of Platforma, Revista de Critică Socială. Petru has been also a board member of the Society for Romanian Studies and continues to act as the chair of the Society's website committee. His academic interests are in the areas of sociology, social history of intellectuals, of public education and social welfare in Eastern Europe and former USSR. He authored the book Ni héros ni traîtres, les écrivains moldaves face au pouvoir soviétique sous Stalin, Neither Heroes Nor Traitors, Moldovan Writers in the Face of Soviet Power Under Stalin, which was published in 2009 by L'Harmattan in Paris, and it was also translated and edited in Romanian by Cartier Publishing House in Chișinău in 2014. So the aim is to have a discussion about Dorina's book, and also followed by a conversation about our guests' current research projects. And in the end, we would like to mark the 30 years anniversary of the independence of the Republic of Moldova. We would also like to hear your questions and comments. Those of you on Zoom, you can intervene directly, or you can leave us your questions or comments in the chat section. And those of you on Facebook, please leave your questions and comments online. So Dorina, Petru, thank you for agreeing to participate to our panel. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Julio.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Julio, for this nice introduction. And I guess I shall start. Yes, with so I will. By the way, I will look at my notes. So just so Dorina Roșca's book is a study of the sociology of intellectuals in the Republic of Moldova during the late socialist era and the period of systemic transformation that began with perestroika. The book is based on research through interviews with people employed in different areas of Moldova during the late Soviet time, and responses to a questionnaire survey conducted in 2007-2008. One of the book's main ideas is that social capital played an important role in the emergence, socio-economic survival, and social-professional reconversion of Moldovan intellectuals before and after 1991. Social capital, as theorized by Pierre Bourdieu and others, emphasizes the relational dimension of a person's status and is defined by the number and quality of the person's social relations. The book argues that in the socialist and post-socialist context, the social capital, also called blood in the Soviet and post-Soviet context, was of a particular significance. These relations reflected the structural inequalities between groups and individuals in the Soviet society. One of the book's strong arguments is that the social capital accumulated, used, and exchanged by Moldovan intellectuals during and after the Soviet period is the social element that ensures continuity between the Soviet period and the post-socialist transition. Dorina Roșca's work focuses on intellectuals. This social group is defined and formed by two key elements: the university diploma and non-manual professional activity. In the Soviet sense of the term, intellectuals and intelligentsia as a class were the non-manual employees working in organizations, enterprises, including the administrative staff. So my first question to Dorina is the following, and it relates to the definition of intellectuals in Dorina's book. Throughout your book, Dorina, you put intellectuals in quotes everywhere. Why?
Well, thank you, Iuliu, for your introduction, and thank you, Petru, for this nice review of my book, and for accepting this provocation, this exchange. As you have just given the definition, the intellectuals I am talking about in this book are not defined in the same way as, for example, the intellectuals of the French tradition, right? Or even the Russian intelligentsia, which particularly in an initial stage or initially refers to well-educated public figures, right? So given the confusion to which the notion of intellectual that I used in my book lends itself, I started studying its uses in Soviet and post-Soviet Moldova. And actually, I have shown that the notion inherited from the pre-Soviet Moldovan system was forged by common sense, which substituted it for that of Soviet intelligentsia, actually. Therefore, it has experienced a kind of continuity of vernacular use actually now in the Soviet period transferred to a social group of a new kind. So the word intellectual was actually charged with a symbolic and sociological function in the sense that I denoted the social category of advancement within Moldovan society of the Soviet type. And the notion also reflected the institutional process of constructing the social group it designated. So this conclusion actually is one of the first contribution of my book, if you want. It constitutes actually one of my research's pivotal moment. this is how I was able to understand later how actually the category of intellectuals had acquired a dominant position in the social imaginary. And actually the group was structured around factors such as the social professional hierarchy, the political and administrative hierarchy, the ethnic hierarchy, and also the organizational one. So in other words, the group was organized around those factors that structured the Moldovan society or the Moldovan social order, if you want, during the Soviet time. So its definition and particularities had to have perished in order to meet actually two imperatives. The first one was to preserve the use of the notion of intellectual, right, in the Romanian language that I have chosen to translate in French language for French speaking public. And the second one was to actually avoid any confusion with the notion of intellectual of the French tradition in particular. So for those reasons, actually, I have chosen to put intellectuals in quotes.
Okay, I completely understand your position, your point. So just to continue the discussion, your book, Dorina, is also a study of economic sociology, which is quite rare, if not an absolute premiere in the scholarship about Moldova. And you argue using the theory of János Kornai, among others, for the importance of the social capital in a shortage economy. And in line with the works of Alena Ledinova and others, the book analyzes the relationships of informal support in socialism and post-socialism. And it considers the social support network as a central element for Moldovan intellectuals in the tactics of socio-economic survival and in the strategies of social professional reconversion, moving from this late Soviet period to the post-1991 transformation. So in this context, I would like to put a somehow provocative question. Did only intellectuals use social capital, including relational capital and various forms of blood and in their daily lives and survival?
Well, no, of course not. Well, the role of social ties actually is verified at all levels of the social hierarchy. My reading of the group of intellectuals is only a tiny projection of the society as a whole. Because I show in this book the group of intellectuals is highly heterogeneous, and thus it actually reveals a high degree of inequalities inside the group and at the same time in the society. So this heterogeneity creates tensions in the allocation and distribution of resources within each of those successive systems that I analyze, and at all levels in the social hierarchy. And at the same time, and this was a peculiarity of the group of intellectuals, and particularly within traditional socialism, the centralized allocation and distribution of resources were directly influenced by criteria such as social status or personal links with the redistributive authority, and so on. So and in this case, not everyone had personal connections with the redistributive authority. It is especially true for individuals which are placed on lower rung in the social hierarchy. So for this reason, and actually in order to emphasize the importance of this kind of quality of social capital, that I distinguished actually in this book those two types of social capital: the relational social capital, which was accumulated particularly within networks of informal personal contacts, and the second one, the institutionalized social capital, which was actually accumulated more or less in an institutionalized way. And speaking about the Soviet period, including perestroika, I called it political capital. So this last form of social capital, the institutionalized one or the political one, is rarer, and only a part of intellectuals actually have access or had access to it, and today have access to it. So my research shows that an unequal endowment of institutionalized type of social capital can create actually tensions within society, and those tensions can soon be regulated by the relational social capital virtues, which is actually more accessible since it encompasses all personal relationships of an individual, regardless of the quantity and or the quality of the resources to which they give access. So the answer is no. Actually, it's a particularity for the entire of the Moldavian society.
Okay, so yeah, and you were speaking about the long run perspective. So one of the remarkable contributions of the book lies in this exploration of the historical dimension that contextualizes and gives meaning to the research object. So the book investigates large-scale social processes like the exodus of intellectuals in the 1940 and 1944, then the evolution of literacy and schooling rates, and the trends of structural social mobility during the communist period and perestroika time. So why and in what way history matter in your analysis of Moldovan society in the late Soviet period and post-Soviet transition? Keeping in mind that this is a sociological research.
Well, well, actually, it plays a very important role because my approach was socio-historical, and I think we have somebody.
Someone forgot to switch off.
Well, actually, my approach was socio-historical because I think that there are real heuristic virtues in it. Okay, and I think as social scientists we cannot ignore. First of all, the interdisciplinary approach, and therefore history, if we want to understand the current power relations and individuals' relationship to political, economic power, etc. So concretely, the historical approach imposed itself on my research quite naturally. Without it, I could not move forward. Let me take an example. Let me give you an example. Actually, when started this research, my first attempt was to adapt the to Moldovan society, the intelligentsia notion and its different uses in Soviet Russia, actually. So from a formal point of view, in Soviet Russia, it represented a social stratum institutionalized in the constitution, and informally it referred mainly to dissidents. Okay, but this approach did not fit with my research field, and particularly it was this second part of the definition, the association with the group of dissidents, which did not fit with my research field. So there was something I was missing that was blocking my analysis. And I had to give up on this attempt quickly. The notion did not suit my field of study. So without clarifications of this notion, my research actually remained frozen. So this is what led me to study its uses in interwar Bessarabia and then in Soviet Moldova, and it brought me to a surprising conclusion about Soviet type Moldovan society in general. I remarked actually that beyond the social realities that evoke the different social groups, heterogeneous character, the Moldovan population actually incorporated the Soviet social structures, formal categories. Okay, so this precise moment determined me to structure my research around formal social categories, which were two classes, right, and the social group, although they may seem simplistic. What is more, the few works that deal with my social structure of Soviet Moldova also convey this officialized version. So by turning to history, I explained that there was an interiorization by individuals of formal Soviet institutions, which was to become important in the construction of post-socialist capitalism. So yes, I think actually we cannot provide an elaborate explanation of the studied present phenomena if we do not consider the history. And as you can see through this example, history was very important to explain some phenomena and to helped me to better explain what is happening today, actually.
Okay, thank you, and well, and this is a good point, and this might be also an invitation to historians to also read your book. So not only sociologists and well, political scientists and so on and so forth. Well, you also examine in your book some cultural peculiarities of the Soviet regime and the Moldovan intelligentsia in terms of ethnic categories. Your book observes, for instance, that there were high numbers of administrators of alien origin, that is, Russian-speaking people, as opposed to natives. We know that the Soviet state was a political regime that ethnicized social groups, and Soviet citizens were ascribed their nationality in their passport even and other formal papers. But how could your book actually help us understand from a sociological perspective this transformation of the Moldovan intelligentsia described in ethnic categories? did being Ukrainian, Moldovan, or Russian matter as much or maybe more than being a worker, a peasant, or an intellectual in Soviet times? And how did this ethnic dynamic influence the process of Soviet modernization in Moldova? Yeah, this was my question.
Well, yeah, well, actually, it's a very complicated question, and yeah, I touched this question in my book without transforming it in a huge topic, but what I showed in my book is that the dual political and the administrative hierarchy was highly ethnicized in Soviet Moldova, and for example, at the end of the socialist system, the Moldovans were actually underrepresented in the political structures. There was in 1989, for example, Moldovans constituted less than half of the total membership of the party, right? So if we look at the category of higher rulers and that of mid-level rulers, which contained directors of industrial companies or directors of other organizations. So the strong presence of this alien element is actually undeniable. And for instance, in the city of Chisinau, for one Moldovan occupying a high ruler position, there were 1.5 non-Moldovans, right, also occupying it. And in cities like Belz, Tiraspol, and Bender, this ratio was actually 5.7, which means that for one Moldovan occupying those functions, we had 5.7 non-Moldovans occupying a high ruler position, right? As for the small towns, apparently they display a balanced representation of Moldovans. Nevertheless, the small towns were populated mainly by an indigenous right population, or in other words, by Moldovans. So, given this fact, actually, the number of alien leaders compared to the local population remains very high. As for the mid-level rulers, they are primarily non-Moldovans in most urban area. All this actually shows that the integration of Soviet Moldova into Soviet structures generated a strong ethnicization of the political administrative hierarchy. Now, well, if you ask me if those non-Moldovan rulers played an essential role in Soviet-style modernization, then the answer will be yes. They were numerous. We cannot not take them into account, right? I will not judge the modernization's quality, because actually it is not my role as a social science researcher. It is actually up to politicians to do it. But one thing is sure: if we consider the economic, social, political changes, etc., during the Soviet period, we have to admit that those changes actually were due to the army due in part to the army of non-Moldovan officials who populated the system at that time. And from this point of view, we can see that they played an important role during this period and during the Soviet modernization. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, well, quite enough. And well, but still, you know, speaking about natives and aliens, I would say that we should try to avoid, you know, kind of essentializing, you know, these ethnic categories. And by the way, the Bessarabian society was not ethnically homogeneous during the interwar period. So, and we also, I think we also have to keep in mind that this ethnic, I mean, Russian-speaking share of the functionaries and professionals in the Moldovan institution happened on the background of the hemorrhage of cadres, so to say, and exodus of intellectuals in the 1940 and 44, 45, as you said in your work. By the way, as you observe in your book, the number and proportion of intellectuals grew in the Moldovan Republic from about 10% in 1959 to 23% in 1985. This shows the high importance given to the social group in the Soviet system. So the Soviet Union was not only the country of the workers and kolkhozniks, as it claimed in propaganda discourses, yes, but also a regime of intellectuals. Am I right?
Well, if we look at the evolution of the socio-educational structure of the Soviet Moldova, we see actually a marked increase in the number of educated people during half a century, right? And this is a fact that no one can dispute. Even if voices can bring forward the ideologized content of this mass education program, this is actually another story, right? At the end of the USSR, the facts are there. We had actually a high proportion of the population in possession of higher education diploma. And suppose we compare this figure with the literacy rate of 30% at the beginning of 1940s, and the rate of holders of higher education diploma of less than 2%, right? Then yes, during the Soviet period, the education structure of the Moldovan population changed significantly. Well, I don't know if we can speak, despite this change. I don't know if we can speak of a regime of intellectuals, especially when speaking about Soviet society, in the sense that we would associate the intellectuals I am talking about with the nomenclatura, right? Precisely, I mark a distance from this approach, which was primarily inspired by the Stalinist engineering about Soviet social structure, but also by works such the work of Hungarians Konrad and Szelényi, the intellectuals on the road of class power, right? And which associate knowledge and political power. Actually, this approach has been heavily criticized, and actually I share those criticism, and I have a discussion about those different critics in the book. So if it is difficult for me to speak of a regime of intellectuals, it is clear that essential leaps have been made in the social and educational structure of the Moldovan population. And it would be more appropriate, I think, this is what I do actually later in my book, to talk about instead of some intellectual regimes or something like this, to talk about social professional categories, right? Because the change in the educational structure necessarily changed the professional structure, which at the end of the Soviet regime included many non-manual workers. So I don't know if I can say that there was an intellectual regime, but there was a change. This is for sure.
Well, you also nicely analyze in your book that, well, the class stratification and deep inequalities in Soviet society in terms of people access to resources and social capital. And your book also emphasizes these sharp contrasts between the status of intellectuals and in the Soviet society and the devaluation of intellectuals, if we may say it, and for some, the downward social mobility in post-1990 Moldovan capitalism. So your book also provides some success stories of Moldovan intellectuals' socio-economic adjustment to the new regime, thanks to previously acquired social capital and also willingness to embrace the new ideological discourse, namely the nationalistic discourse and the neoliberal agenda. However, what is the role of the Moldovan intellectuals in the post-1991 period, and how did intellectuals survive in this time of endless crisis?
Well, this is a huge and very complex question, and actually I tried to answer in my book not exactly the role of played by those intellectuals, but particularly what happened to those intellectuals. And actually, well, to answer it. We have to understand that what is called intellectual in the post-Soviet period, and I tried to redefine this group, if you want, and actually we have. Let us not forget actually that the definition of intellectuals was institutionally instituted during the Soviet period, right? It means that it was attached to the social, economic, and political structures of Soviet Moldova. However, at the end of the first post-Soviet decade, where my analysis actually of the system stops, Moldova obtains a hybrid system combining new institutions with old ones. I am thinking in particular about the change in Moldovan society's structure under the influence of factors such as privatization, liberalization, etc. Those transformations actually were multiple and multifaceted. And with the privatization of state property, we actually witness the emergence of a new group of owners, right? Whose members also occupy important political positions. The transformation of state enterprises had also contributed to the institutionalization of the phenomenon of unemployment, for example, and therefore to the emergence of the unemployed category. The introduction of a multi-party regime also had opened up new avenues of access to the republic's political life for individuals of different origins, including issued from this group of intellectuals. In this context, the old formal social structure actually based on the division of manual and non-manual labor is no longer relevant, actually. And the new configuration of the system in the post-Soviet period generates an ideology in reverse of the Soviet ideology, actually. So the old normative criteria of social stratification are no longer relevant too, right? So we have actually to keep it in mind in order to answer your question. So if I think the notion of intellectual in the post-Soviet period will therefore come closer to its sociological meaning of transferring or producing knowledge. Intellectuals will be individuals belonging to social professional categories supposed to produce and or to transfer knowledge to society, right? And we can include here teachers, professors, researchers, artists, writers, and so forth. So if actually we adhere to this new definition, because it's a changing definition, because of this institutionalized characteristic of the original definition, right? Well, the role of intellectuals would be reduced to this mission, I think, of producing and transferring knowledge with, however, I would say some interference in political life, but this role remains to be analyzed. So this is just a hypothesis, if you want.
Yeah, great. I mean, I will intervene now because we're drawing to a close here, and I was surprised. I mean, I just want to see whether or not there might be some questions from the audience. But I was surprised. I'm a student of history, so I'm not a researcher. But none of you used 1991 as the year of independence, right? It's post-Soviet period, the new regime, capitalism, right? So just to kind of draw it to a close, right? Dorina, you said that there's still need for investigations, right? How does the independence tie into the analysis of intellectuals, right? So this might be just an open-ended question, or it might be an invitation for the audience to also ask questions about your book. And by the way, it was a fascinating exchange. And now I'm actually curious to read more about your work.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, I did not mention this turning point 1991 because it's just a date. It's just a moment, if you want. Okay, I'm thinking I'm analyzing in the book, and actually all my researchers are based on analyzing processes. So a process will not end in 1991. So it will be a continuity, and for this reason, I'm using this. I'm alternating Soviet, post-Soviet, because I'm thinking the systemic change as a process. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, and if I may, well, to complete, if you want, this point, and well, I completely agree with what you say, and I would say that, well, for me neither this date doesn't make sense in itself. It's, well, we are looking more, and Dorina in her book especially to a, let's say, a broader and to more, how to say, to the smooth transformation occurring during the 80s and 90s. By the way, we can say that the post-Soviet transition starts during the late Soviet time, during the Perestroika time, and we can also say that
it actually, it was actually the point I discussed in the book also. Yeah.
And I would say, just to be a little bit more provocative, is that Moldova was not very independent nor in the Soviet time, neither in the Soviet time nor in the post-Soviet,
you are provocative.
So-called independence, since it changed, so to say, the orders of the Central Committee by the Washington Consensus. So it's, well, quite the same afterwards. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if we can actually open it up. If any of you, both on Zoom and on Facebook, if you have any questions, this would be a good moment to ask them.
I would pose a question.
Sure.
Yes, can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dorina, for your interesting presentation.
Thank
The
you.
way as an example of continuity amidst discontinuity. At the Moldova State University in 1991, the chair for Communist Party history was renamed in the chair of Romanian history. So question for research, right?
Absolutely.
The same people, in fact, embarked into a new adventure writing Romanian history.
Absolutely.
Yes, I would be interested to see your perspective towards the book topic from today, you know, 30 years of independence, right? And if you would have the chance to rewrite or add a chapter to your book, what would you change, or what would you add? Have we missed something in the 30 years? Have something occurred in this period of time that might have changed or, you know, remodeled the way you saw the intellectuals? Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana, for your very interesting and provocative question. I don't know what to say. Maybe I will include actually I don't know, maybe I would further develop the dual characteristic of Moldovan post-socialist or post-Soviet socioeconomic dynamics, because one of my work's conclusions was that the 1990s Moldavian capitalism of the post-Soviet type actually was characterized in dual terms, or there was urban-rural cleavage, private-public cleavage, etc. So I would add here actually the necessity to explore maybe the hypothesis of dual socio-economic dynamic. One induced actually by the business and political circles populating the state structures, and which constitutes actually the official version of Moldavian capitalism, and another induced actually by Moldavian population socioeconomic practices. I think I would maybe also consider in depth the migratory phenomenon to describe actually and explain the developments after the year 2000, particularly, where I observed the generalization of a socioeconomic regime based on what Karl Polanyi called a regime of reciprocity, and which can actually explain, together with this oligarchic political economy, explain this dual characteristic of the post-Soviet, I don't know, independence Moldavian capitalism, post-independence Moldavian capitalism, something like this.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Thank you. And congratulations for your book.
Thank you.
Once again.
Thank you, Svetlana.
Thank you very much, Dorina, first of all, for agreeing to participate to our book talk, Petru for reviewing the book, Svetlana for asking a question, and last but not least, Roland for making the Zoom link and the Facebook event happen. I'm gonna say goodbye for now. I'm really happy we were able to conclude our well there's a question from Ivan.
There is
okay,
a question.
so
Yes.
Yeah, Ivan, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Yes.
I have a question for Dorina about the factors of success for institutionalization of intelligentsia. As I remember, in the 90s, there was some attempts of local Moldovan professors to initiate their own political party, like a league of pedagogues or something like that. My great grandfather was one of the members of it, and he failed completely, and the party failed completely. So what was the factors that provided the conditions for successful institutionalization for intellectuals without losing their status?
Well, if I understand, your question is what was the conditions for this kind of institutionalization, right?
Yeah, how these intellectuals could save their status, could keep being intellectuals with some priorities, with some successful histories.
Well, first of all, belonging to the group of intellectuals was not incompatible with the political activity. So this kind of institutionalization, I don't know if I can call it institutionalization. I think we do not use the same notion of institutionalization. But belonging to a political party, it's not incompatible actually with this intellectual status, right? And actually, as I show in my book, actually there are different paths followed by the owners of the political capital, of an important volume of political capital during the first period of the post-Soviet transformation. So there was all conditions met to reconverse in this sense. So yes, well, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm not sure I understand well your question, but actually, yeah, it was not incompatible.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. So with that, I should bring the meeting to an end. Again, thank you all for participating, and please keep an eye out for the Journal of Romanian Studies, where Petru's review of Dorina's book will be published this coming April. So I'll say goodbye. This is the end of our mini series of book talks. Hope you will be able to join us back in the fall. So thank you all for attending, and I wish you good luck with your work, right?
Thank you, Iuliu, you too, and thank you all and thank you, Petru, again for this so rich discussion.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, thank you, Iuliu, for inviting us. Yeah,
no problem.